Welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast, conversations, revelations, and inspirations behind the books. It's time for our segment, Literary Commentary. Thank you for listening.
Good evening, listeners. I'm Amy Shannon, and welcome to Literary Commentary.
I'm Talia Haven.
What another great time we have. April, the month of April is upon us. So, I don't have any reviews, or I have lots of reviews to do because I'm catching up. But I don't have any on my calendar for releases. And before we get into today's literary commentary topic, I just want to remind people and please share with your friends, especially other authors, that there is a couple scammers, could be the same one using different email addresses, um, pretending to be me. And I have put alerts. I did a video in all my emails. In my signature, I have it's an alert, so people can see it when I send them something, and I have a watermark I created in the signature of my email. So and there are a lot of other people posing as others. Have that information on my blog, and anytime I get updated information, I always do that. So if you subscribe to amysbookshelfreviews.com, any blog post about any scams that I know about will be posted on that. So now segueing into April is Disabled Writers Month. And as a disabled writer, it's not all about me. So we're going to talk about some other things. So, you've probably have, I pulled up a list, and I was actually surprised by some that I didn't realize were disabled in their own way. So you probably have a list of your own. So why don't you start?
I'm going to start with Octavia Butler. She died in 2026. She was dyslexic, and she wrote the Kindred and the Parable series. I had read a couple books of hers. She was also African American, if I'm not mistaken. I read some of her work, and another one, and I didn't realize that she was dyslexic. We have also an Argentinian gentleman by the name of George Louis Burgess. He died in 1986. He wrote Fictionarius and the Alphia. He wasn't born blind, but he eventually went blind later on in his years. And I think he went blind before he started doing his work.
Wow.
The most wonderful person I found that just fascinated me was Christy Brown. Christy Brown was an artist and a painter. He was a writer. He died in September of 1981. He had cerebral palsy, and he wrote the book Left Foot, a memoir, and Down All the Days. Towards the end, when he was painting and when he was writing, he actually used the toes on his left foot. That's how he managed to do it. I found it really interesting because when I was researching him, I found him, and he was beside one of the paintings that he'd done of himself, and it was very dark blue and shades of gray that he had painted, and he actually used the toes on his left foot for painting and writing.
That is so amazing because he's on my list too, but I can imagine. I mean, I dabble in painting. I'm better at abstract because my hands shake, but I can draw. Me and SpongeBob though, but I can't imagine painting with my toes with one foot, let alone typing. I
Yeah.
wonder, it makes me wonder, do they make a keyboard for your feet for people who don't have hands or can't use them?
Yeah, I don't know. I
Huh,
know that there used to be a Jodi Arias that used to paint with her mouth. She was
yeah,
rather famous because she was quadriplegic.
yeah.
I don't remember how exactly she got injured, but she used to paint with the brush in her mouth, and she would paint. I don't think she ever did any writing. She probably has a memoir out, but I don't know if she wrote it on her own.
But even with, you know, um, just living daily life, um, doing things. I mean, I must say, and as I wasn't born disabled, I just became that way over time. And with my arm surgery, I couldn't use my right arm for a very long time, and I can use it now, just not as great, not as long as I used to before the surgery. But just using my left hand, and I'm not left-handed, I'm like, oh my God, so hard. When my mom broke her arm when I was a kid, she taught herself, she practiced every day to write with her left hand. And after practice, I think she practiced for about a month, then she could write as well with her left hand as she could with her right hand. And I was like, I can't do that.
No.
I think it's so if you're whether you're born disabled or you become disabled in some way, and there are so many different ways. Being disabled just means, you know, there are some things that you can't do that others can, and um, sometimes you can do. And also, being disabled means you can do things that others don't do, because you have to adapt with how you live. Um, I think back to, uh, you know, um, Stephen Hawking, really. Uh, Amazing mind, and but still, how he could maneuver with just his thoughts on a on a computer and talk that way. That
Mm-hmm.
is, that is just amazing. And he did write, so he wrote his memoirs, and he also wrote his theory of whatever. I don't remember what it was. Um, but it's learning like that, and some aren't born with being that way. One of my favorite authors who was disabled is Helen Keller. And obviously, hopefully, everyone has heard of Helen Keller. And if you haven't, Google her. Um, and um, I remember being little, and there were two different versions of what they called the movie The Miracle Worker. Uh, the first one was a young Patty Duke, or Patty Austin, Patty Duke, and then when she grew up, well, she played Helen Keller, and then in the second version of the same one, she played the teacher, and Melissa Gilbert played um, Helen Keller. Um, but I, um, probably about a year or two ago, I was trying to remember books that I read when I was younger, and I wanted to like kind of reconnect with them. And I found Helen's the story of her life. And she wasn't born blind and deaf. She just got that way. And she was angry and frustrated because nobody understood what she wanted, and the way it was perceived that she was being a spoiled brat. But there was just a quick little thing that I just wanted to read in her from her book, because I think it kind of is to make um, what people sometimes you have to you know, people make you see things in a different way. And well, I watched the movie Wonder yesterday, and it makes me cry all the time. So that's where I got that quote. But it's correct. Um, I'm just going to read a quick excerpt from Helen Keller's The Story of My Life. It's a really interesting book about, and it's from her point of view. It said, meanwhile, the desire to express myself grew. The few signs I used became less and less adequate, and my failures to make myself understood were invariably followed by outbursts of passion. I felt as if invisible hands were holding me, and I made frantic efforts to see myself. I struggled. Not that struggling helped matters, but the spirit of resistance was strong within me. I generally broke down in tears and physical exhaustion. If my mother happened to be near, I crept into her arms, too miserable to remember the cause of the tempest. After a while, the need of some means of communication became so urgent that these outbursts occurred daily, sometimes hourly. My parents were deeply grieved and perplexed. We lived a long way from any school for the blind or deaf, and it seemed unlikely that anyone would come to such an out of the way place as, I'm going to mispronounce this, Pascumbia, to teach a child who was both deaf and blind. Indeed, my friends and relatives sometimes doubted whether I could be taught. My mother's only ray of hope came from Dickens' American Notes. She had read his account of Laura Bridgman, and she vaguely remembered that she was blind and deaf, yet had been educated. But she also remembered the hopeless pang that Dr. Howe, who had discovered the way to teach the deaf and blind, had been dead many years. His methods had probably died with him. And if not, how was a little girl in a far off town in Alabama to receive the benefit of them? And I think it's something that can kind of fit a lot of situations. If you become disabled, you know, you were born with a disability, and then like people perceive you differently. I can go through uh, when I've noticed a change in how people, not not my sons or my daughter-in-law or my son-in-law, um, they're pretty much the biggest support I have. But even my siblings and just people in general, when I'm out in public, they look at me differently. They treat me differently, treat me like I'm in their way, or, oh, you aren't disabled and now you are, and I don't want to even deal with it. Or you're going to get all the attention because you're disabled. I have a sister like that who thinks, you know, she has to one up everybody on what's wrong with her. But even when you sometimes it's very hard for me to communicate in a way that I used to be able to. And so I can understand um, frustration and how people perceive you. And I must say that when I was going through the list that I came up with, I was inspired. And I also realized that, uh, you know, I not letting my disability get in the way of my passion, my purpose in life. I think I have more than one purpose, but in that, those are how I get out of bed in the morning, even when I don't feel like it. And of course, some people are less disabled than I am, and some people are more disabled. And it doesn't matter who's worse off than others. Everyone is different. You could have the same exact disability as someone else, and you two are totally different because you're totally different people. Uh, so um, I just find that it was going through this list when I was researching for this episode. I learned, like, you were very fascinated by the painting with the toes, Christy Brown, and so was I. And then there are hidden disabilities that, like you said, about the author, excuse me, her name escapes me, but she was dyslexic. And
Octavia Brown. Yep.
yes, and I was thinking that uh, that's gotta be, especially being dyslexic, because I'm not, but I knew people who were and how they struggled. And in some, especially when I was like in grade school or even high school, if you didn't hear of people being dyslexic, they just thought they were slow, or, they didn't realize that they saw words in a different way, so they were either labeled special ed, or, they had some kind of learning disability and things like that, and got pushed to the side. So a lot of people who had dyslexia, or have it, um, you know, they if they didn't get the like someone to educate them and help them learn how to, um, read or see things in a different way, slow down the chaos that, it's kind of in their mind, uh, and have them be a writer, especially. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
it's sad that if there are people out there that that didn't get the help they need. So, 'cause sometimes having a learning disability can make you feel dumb, and you're not.
It's true. That's true.
It's like
She wrote a
people,
lot of books.
yeah, and people who stutter, just because you have a stutter, they think that, you know, um, I like to watch all these weird, well, they're like studio videos about being kind and, you know, not judging people by what they look like or what they sound like, or, how they dress, and, because they're trying to get messages out, and some people just don't get it. Just because someone stutters doesn't mean they're they they just speak. So a lot of people that stutter, they they stutter more when they're nervous, or there's certain letters that they come across, that when they have trouble not repeating the same uh, letter. A lot of times it's an S, and there's some other ones. And if you don't get like speech therapy when you're young, it's hard to get over a stutter when you're older.
Yes, that's true.
So, did you have another person on your list?
Nope, I had the three.
Oh, well, I learned that Truman Capote had epilepsy,
Oh, yeah.
and I did not know that.
Me
I
either.
found that it was. I mean, I've read *To Kill a Mockingbird*, um, and uh, he was a friend of um, Harper Lee, which now is, turned into a big. Um, that was a novelist, and uh, but yeah, I mean, I've seen people die from epilepsy because they have a seizure in their sleep, and also people with that, even with medication, they don't know when it's going to happen.
No.
That they, they're if it's really bad and not under control, even if it is under control, you can always have a spell. Um, you know, you can't really. It's not safe to drive. Those I know some people still do. When I found out when I couldn't drive, I immediately stopped, and I'm like, nope, it wasn't safe for me to drive anymore. So, that's not an easy thing to give up. But yeah, I didn't realize that uh, he was. Uh,
Didn't Harper Lee just recently pass away?
I think so. Try to keep up on that, but then I'm really tired of people I like dying on me, and it's and I think so. I think I heard something about that. Um, uh, and it was just that's right. I misspoke. Uh, she wrote To Kill a Not a Mockingbird, and based one of her characters on Truman Capote. He was most famous for Breakfast at Tiffany's and In Cold Blood, and I just kind of read that the wrong way. So I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. I read that book several times, and I don't know who the author is, but my mind doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. But maybe I think that uh, yeah, there's people that uh, they've come physically disabled. Sometimes it's emotionally or mentally disabled. And, uh, but after there's always that period, like especially if you are, you know, um, used to being just a regular person. Uh, I'm not going to use the word normal, but going about your life. You don't have any really serious issues except your own faults, and then all of a sudden, something you become disabled and something is taken away from you or something, and there's that period that you're like, oh my, you're just self-pity, self-doubt, your esteem goes down, but then you're like, how do I want to do this, so how can I do that? And then you find a way to do the things that you love. Some things I can't do anymore, and I know it, but sometimes it doesn't stop me from forgetting that I can't do something, and then I try it, and then I fall on my face, sometimes literally. But, I've learned to adapt. I've had to adapt to everything. I mean, I have to have cups that have lids and aren't glass because I'll break them if I drop them. Um, and various things like that. And sometimes I have to know when my body says, you got to rest, because other times I'll just keep trying to push through with what I'm doing because I don't like having things not done.
True, true. And I think too, when something like that is suddenly taken away from you, you realize how much you took for granted the
Okay,
action that you can do.
exactly. And I found too, my my sons are grown, and I still have that instinct to be motherly, where um I end up being a backseat driver, and then I'm like, "Where'd you learn how to drive?" And they're like, "You, mom." And I'm like, "Oh, I better shut up then."
Being
Or
motherly never goes away.
yeah, I know. It's like I'll tell them, "Oh, you should wear a jacket. It's chilly outside." Mom, stop being a mom. I'm like, "Never. I will never stop
Never.
being a mom, but I will try to keep my thoughts about telling you what to do." But when my son Robert was going to high school, um, every day before he went to school, I'm like, "Have a good day," and he'd be like, "Don't tell me what to do, mom." Like, "Okay, have a bad day." But that's just, that's we just always yeah, have they don't like my mom jokes, but I don't really care because I tell them anyways.
Yep.
And and when they laugh, I make sure I point it out. I'm like, "See, you laughed at that." So, yes, April is Disabled Writers Month. Um, and it's, so listeners, look up, uh, do a Google search for disabled writers and then pick up one of their books if you haven't yet and read it and see if you could tell that the person who wrote it was disabled and see if you enjoy it. I think that would be, um, it would honor anyone who, even though they're disabled, are still able in some way to put pen to paper. And that's just a metaphor for however people, do their art. And it's not just writers, but I find artists of any kind, actors, anything, arts and entertainment, that is, where it's at. So, some people wonder sometimes when they see someone on TV who is, they think they're playing a disabled person. Um, and they don't realize that that person really does have um, a disability. They think it's just, an actor or whatever. And it is amazing how um, actors with disability, I mean, you think of, there's several uh, persons who had Down syndrome, with cerebral palsy, they continue to act and do things, and they can inspire others. They create foundations and do amazing work. They want to not have the spotlight on their disability, but on them as a person.
And
So
their talent.
exactly, yeah, exactly what they can do, and it's still amazing. And I must say that I grew up watching Michael J. Fox, and seeing him now still just you know fighting.
Mhm.
You know, I applaud him. I mean, he met his wife on Family Ties, and
Yes, he
then
did.
been together ever since. So, if you don't know what Family Ties is, you should Google that now. Well, after this episode. And so we will move into the final piece of tonight's show, and you have some calls for submissions.
Yes. Autonomous Press. They do anthologies, and this one here is number 11. It's their Spoon Knife anthology. And the themes is remnants. And I went through, and they're looking for um castaways, people that walk into ruins, anything that is where you are alone. They're also looking for fiction, memoirs, and poetry for your poetry people and memoir people. They're looking for that for their Remnants Anthology number 11.
Oh,
They're accepting submission until July 31st of this year. Um, they will notify you no later than January of 2027. And they're going to publish this anthology on May of 2027. So I think you normally put a link in comments where they could check onto it.
yes.
Click on the link if you've got something. I'm not really sure about something that has been previously printed. You'll probably want to take a look at their submission guidelines. I don't remember seeing it. But yeah, memoir, usually in an anthology car or call memoirs, yeah, that's a good one. Is the memoirs of poetry and fiction.
Oh, that's really good too. And I people used to think that anthologies were just books that had stories written by people that no one ever heard of. Um, and sometimes writers start out that way,
Yep.
adding to anthologies. And I have met and reviewed authors who did anthologies and did their own stuff, and they still will participate in anthologies. Um, so sometimes, an anthology is all of your own work, but it's also, worth, if you're writing in something that fits and a particular theme for an anthology, because most anthologies have a particular theme. Sometimes it's multiple themes and you can write in one or the other, but anytime you're going to submit to any place, make sure you read their submission guidelines
Yep.
carefully, because all it takes is that you submit something the wrong way and you're out. So
Yep.
you need to really, you want to show them that you pay attention. And I know that some people just kind of skim things over before they do something. And I've been guilty of that myself, but sometimes you got to take a step back and really, you know, this is your work and you're presenting to someone. So you want to make sure that you follow their guidelines, not just do whatever the heck you want.
Yep. And they have a long, successful line of anthologies. I mean, this is number 11.
That's
So,
great. Yeah. I might even check that out. Uh, yeah, that's it's you're part of something, and if sometimes you think that, oh, I got to wait forever. Well, being a writer, patience is better than impatience, because with impatience you make mistakes, you go too fast, and I know sometimes you're like, oh, I just want to get this done, but I want to get it done so I know how it ends.
yep.
But it's worth it. If you're a writer with passion, it's worth the time and effort and patience. Um, whether you're submitting to a publisher, looking for an agent, looking for a publisher, or even just publishing it on your own, take the time and make sure that whatever you are producing is the best that you can produce. And if you're submitting, always know what the guidelines are and what the do's and don'ts are, and if there's accepting your genre. It's very important, because sometimes people forget that. They'll just, same thing when they're looking for book reviewers. They're like, oh yeah, I'll just send this and see what they say. If you're sending someone to sci-fi, uh, they only
Yeah.
read horror,
Yep.
they're like, delete.
Yep. They're not
So
going to enjoy it nearly as much if it's nothing they enjoy.
exactly. And I tell you, I mean, I read a lot of different types of genres, but of course I have my favorites too. And those are the ones that I also go out and buy for myself. And I like buying the print books. Digital for reviews are just a lot easier for me to get through them. But if I want to sit back and enjoy a book that I love to read, I will get the print book.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been the end of our literary commentary, and um, don't forget to join us on next month for another great literary commentary. And this podcast runs the first and last Monday of the month at 7 p.m., 2 different segments. And it also runs every Sunday, no reruns, always a new episode at 6 and 6:30. So I want to thank everyone. Thank you for joining us, and feel free to comment on the show or any show, and join me again next week. And if you want to check out my work, just Google me. I'm Amy Shannon. And if you want to check out Talia Haven's work, you can Google her. And we are both on Amazon too. So make sure you check that out, because tell you a secret, Talia Haven's one of my favorite authors.
Thank
So
you.
you're welcome. So be safe, be well, and always be kind. It's free.
Thank you for listening to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. If you wish to be a guest on the show, you can go to amysbookshelfreviews.com/podcast and schedule your pre-recording. Please follow this podcast on Spotify, even if you listen to it on other streaming sites. Also, this podcast is on every first Monday and last Monday of the month at 7 p.m. and every Sunday at 6 and 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Amy Shannon. Be safe, be well, and always be kind.